Hi everybody, once again this is Zeri, Persian pen name on AO3, here to read you some stories. It is week 22 of my transition. It's also like 6 in the morning. I have not slept. So, y'all get no sleep Zeri. Who's also just breaking out all the fuck over Zeri. Let's see, what's been going on this week? Well, I think the most exciting thing outside of work in my own personal life is I finished blocking and dyeing and blocking a shawl. My daisy shawl, which I've mentioned before, it was in a walnut dye bath for the second time. It was dyed once before I started knitting it, but it was in the dye bath for the second time to get rid of some striping issues for over a month. Yeah, it still had the stripes. So I said, fuck it, I've got a cheap crock pot and some acid dyes, and we're gonna do this. So I did that. I just went ahead and dyed it black, because you can't stripe when I've dyed it black. It did take 2 rounds. I just needed the first time I did it, I only did it for like an hour and a half, and I don't think I had gotten all of the walnut slime off, because it wasn't quite... The dye bath didn't exhaust, and it had kind of a funky smell still. Walnut dye bath smells bad. I mean, if you're doing a fermented dye bath. But yeah, it's not a fun smell. So yeah, and then I've got this blocking frame that I built out of PVC, which I made initially way too large. The PVC comes in 10-foot segments. I had initially cut it down to 8-foot, thinking, well, if I know it's supposed to be a large shawl, maybe over 6 foot, if it stretches more than that, up in the 7-foot range, then if I make my blocking frame 8 foot, I'll definitely have enough room. Yeah, I don't think I'll be using this frame again. It took so much longer to try and get everything set up on that frame than it would have to just used pins and pinned it to the bed. But I did... Here's my super fancy PVC frame. But yeah, I did manage to get... Whoop. There we go. Nope. Close enough. Nope. I'm gonna have to edit all of this because I look ridiculous. Alright, there we go. Close enough. So I did manage to get it on there eventually. By that time the shawl was entirely dry again, so I was outside at the time, because I ended up having to cut 2 more feet off of each of the bars of the frame, just because I did not have the wherewithal for that much dealing with it, and getting it through the door was a hassle. So I was outside, and I had this now dry shawl in a blocking frame, and I said screw it, and I just turned the hose on it. So the 3 things you need for felting are heat, moisture, and agitation, and the water from the hose is cold, and that thing was blocked within an inch of its life, so it wasn't gonna move anywhere. So I did that. I also I dyed some roving as well. That was my test run to make sure that my crockpot methods would work. My crockpot method is very, very easy. I put a unit of dye in the water, I stir it around, I toss some roving in, and I let it chill for like 2 hours. Set it on high, and then I just turn it off, and, the next morning I grab it out. If there's any dye left in the water, I put in my bit of roving that I've got as a dye mop. So I made some black, gray, blue, purple roving just to make sure that I, could do that, and just to see if the black would break any. But, so I got that done, and I've started, started spinning again. Since getting rid of the, what's it called? Of my giant loom, I had enough floor space to get out my spinning wheel, so I got an Ashford Elizabeth that I got secondhand, and I've got a Babes double treadle production wheel that I got like in '06. I was still in college. I was a tiny wee baby Zeri. So I've had that thing for 13 years now. And, 17. Yeah, 17 years now. And I only just now had an issue with the connector, the little plastic bit. Oh, I've got it right here. The little plastic bit from the, that holds the treadles on. Yeah, just that bit of plastic disconnected. So I ordered some new ones, and they came in, and I popped them on, and works just fine. And now I'm back to spinning. So I've been spinning on that black roving that I test dyed. Whenever I'm not doing that, I've gotten a little bit farther along in my kitten ball shawl. Not very far. I've just gotten to I'm on the second row with the fish eyes now. Or the peas, not fish eyes. I always get those two mixed up. Those are important because on the wrong side rows, it's not just knit all the way across. So I have to remember those when I've got them. That's pretty much it. I've done a lot of crafting stuff. That's about it. When did I do the mammoth? No, I did that like last week. Yeah. Time. Anyway, we're on week 22 of my transition. I just went and got my meds a little bit ago. Not sure if I mentioned. Mine is compounded. I don't do the androgen gel, and I don't take shots. I've just got a compounded lotion, basically, that, I just rub on my skin and then I'm good to go. Because it is compounded, it's not covered by insurance, which actually might be a good thing in Texas, unfortunately, because it's Texas, and God forbid trans people do anything. Yeah, anyway, that's a whole bunch of other ranting. You all know. We all know. It's not good. But that's a thing that's also been happening. I was going to go to the protest in Austin on Tuesday, but I had really a bad brain day. It was not a time where I was able to be out in public, so, and these things happen, which, okay, yes, I need to take my brain meds, which, help these things happen less, and my iron. I just keep all of my, I don't know if I've mentioned here, but one of the best things I ever got are these timer bottles. This is how you know I'm old, and I'm excited about a medication bottle. But they tell you when the last time was that they were opened. So if you're like me and you have memory issues, and you're going, wait, did I take my meds today? Or was that yesterday that I'm thinking of? You just look at the bottle and it tells you how long it's been. Like in my case just now, it had been 30 hours because I took it at midnight. Well, I guess not last night, now it's the night before, but I took it at midnight. So, I wanted to say Thursday, but today's been Thursday, except now it's Friday. It's not tomorrow until I sleep. That's the rule. But we're not here for that. We are here for me to read you some stories. This one I had thought that I had already read one of their works, but I had not. I think it's just that I'm on some forums with them, and that's where not forums, I'm on some servers with them, speaking of being old, and I just recognized their name. But this is another original work. It was for Id Pro Quo 2021. It is titled Magics of the Mind by Elsin. It's a fantasy, modern adjacent with magic. The tags are telepathy, magic, secrets, secret identity, male student mage disguised as a girl, and female student warrior disguised as a boy. That just sounds like a lot of fun. So, this was for Prairie Dawn. Isabel was lost in a sea of thoughts. She had been doing something before this, but she wasn't sure what. All around her were other people, their inner monologues pressing against her own mind, scraps of ideas flooding her head. Maybe someone else would have thought she was picking up on secrets, but she couldn't. There was so much, and she couldn't even begin to parse most of it. Emotions and thoughts, all tangled together, threatening to overwhelm her more than they already had. Something brushed against her hand, that one light touch like fire on her skin, a wave of alien worry crashing over her, and she hissed as she pulled her hand away. The worry faded back into the churning sea of everything else. Theoretically, Isabel thought, she should be able to see and hear. There was nothing wrong with her eyes or ears, no blindfold or earplugs, but her vision was nothing but shifting colors on a dark background, and all that she could hear was static. Even her sense of touch was difficult to access in her current, overwhelmed state. Maybe she stayed like that for hours. Maybe it was only a few minutes. All she knew was that the nearest mine seemed to grow more distant, and at some point someone else grasped her hands. This touch was nothing like the last one. That had been light and painful. This was firm and confident, and no foreign emotions threatened to overwhelm her. She leaned into that touch, and a string of whispered words swam into her head. Far ler sanema, morlanad alfora, al loranda timaru, ella nusungadal. It was the Idan, she realized. The first thing that a new mage in training would learn, the grounding chant that was used to help them center themselves in their magic. She knew it, vaguely, because Laia had taught it to her 2 years earlier, when the other girl had first been learning it, and Laia was the only person she knew who said it in the cadence with which it was drifting through her mind. Isabel blinked harshly, trying to focus in on the Adan, trying to clear her sight. The rush of other people's thoughts dimmed, and Laia's words swelled in prominence, a steady beat against the chaos of the world. After what felt like an eternity, she came back to herself. She was sitting on the floor of her history classroom, leaning against the wall, her uniform slightly askew. Laia knelt before her, hands clasped tightly over hers, brown hair windswept and her gray eyes wide and worried. "Hey," she said softly. "Isaac, you back?" Yeah," said Isabel. "Yeah, I'm back." There was still a strange foreign buzz in the back of her head, but it was distant now, nothing like it had been before Laia had come to help her ground herself. "You can't keep going like this," said Laia seriously, sitting back a little. You can't just ignore a gift like this, like you've been trying to do. It'll only get worse. Isabel scowled. I never asked for this, she snapped. Laia sighed and reached up to tangle her fingers in her hair. I know you didn't, she said, but that doesn't change any of what I just said. You still need to get it under control, actually under control. Suppressors aren't going to work forever, and the longer you keep it suppressed, the stronger and less controlled it'll become. I know, said Isabel softly. I know. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have snapped at you. I'm not like you. I'm not a mage. I'm supposed to be a warrior, a guardian, not a damn mind mage. You don't have to be a mind mage, Laia pointed out, ever the reasonable one. You just need to learn enough to keep yourself separate from everyone else, at a minimum. Though really, don't you think this could be a boon to your protector abilities too? You'll be able to stop threats that no one else even know about yet. I suppose, she said dubiously. Come on, said Laia. Classes are over now, and I bet you're hungry. I know I certainly am. Let's go get dinner, shall we? She stood up and held out a hand to Isabel. All right, said Isabel, and she took Laia's hand and let her pull her to her feet. That night, Laia lay sleeplessly in his bed, staring up at the shadows of his ceiling. He could help Isaac with his mind magic problem, he was pretty sure. If there was one thing he was good at, too good at if you asked his father or half his teachers, it was reining things in and keeping control. He still wasn't anything special when it came to using lots of power. Was an atrocious battle mage on account of that, but, well, there was yet time for him to learn. No, the problem with letting Isaac get his mind magic under control was that he'd have to let Isaac into his head, and he wasn't at all sure he could keep his secret from the other boy if he did that. His control over his train of thought wasn't bad, but if he slipped up even once, that might mean the end of everything. But Isaac refused to let any of the actual magic teachers help him. He didn't need the help, he claimed, though Laia suspected he was also wary of the intimacy. And well, if anyone was going to find out Laia's secret, Isaac wouldn't be the worst candidate. And maybe, if his father did find out, he could spin it as a screening. After all, he could hardly trust the kind of person who spilled his secrets to the School of Magic and the Royal Ministry Academy to be a loyal member of his future Kingsguard, could he? Laia sighed and rolled over onto his side, closing his eyes. He'd offer to help tomorrow. Part of him wanted to wait, but the longer they waited, the harder it would get, and Laia didn't like the way things were headed already, even if Isaac himself was busy pretending to be unbothered by it all. The next day was a weekend, so Laia didn't bother reaching for his uniform when he got up. Instead, he went over to his closet and pulled out a soft, pale blue dress his cousin had got for him, when she'd found out he was going to school as a girl. He'd never been certain whether she meant it as a joke or not, but it was really soft, and even if he didn't grow out of it by the time he was done, which he probably would, he knew he'd never get to wear anything like it again after Prince Nimaliel returned to his life at the palace. Well, there was that, and also, he was not at all above drawing amusement from the way his father frowned every time he saw a picture of Laia dressed in girls' clothes that weren't his uniform. What was he supposed to do? Act and look like a boy? That would make him a far more obvious target for anyone looking to track down the Prince Heir anyway. Laia Nimar was a nobody, a teenage girl from a painfully boring family in a painfully boring city. He shook his head at his own distraction and shoved his frameworks textbook into a small bag he slung over his shoulder. Then he put on his shoes and wandered down to breakfast. After he'd eaten, he could track Isaac down. "Isaac," said Laia from somewhere behind her, and Isabel flinched at the unexpected voice. "I thought I'd find you here." She was in the library, another bead added to the chain of her suppression amulet, looking through the books on binding magic for the umpteenth time. They wouldn't tell her anything new at this point, but she didn't know what else to do. It wasn't like she could let any of the magic teachers into her head, after all. Not with the kind of secrets that she kept. "You're not thinking of doing a binding ritual, are you?" said Laia with a frown, pulling away the nearest book to study it briefly before snapping it shut. "I know you know that's a bad idea." "Not seriously," Isabel mumbled. "It's just that I don't know what else I should do about it. I don't have the time to learn to be a proper mage, and even if I did, as far as I can tell, this gift of mine is too far gone for that to work alone." Laia sighed and dropped onto the chair across from her. "I have an idea about that," she said slowly. "You might not like it exactly, but it might be better than going to the teachers at least." "And what's this idea of yours?" "Let me help you," said Laia. "If there's anything I'm good at, it's fine control. And I know the theory behind mind magic really well. I could probably help you, as well as most of the teachers could. Not Mina already, but she's a master of the mind arts, so... I think I can help you well enough for what you need." Isabel opened her mouth to say no, tell Laia that she appreciated the offer, but she'd just muddle through, then closed it again. Laia sighed. "I don't know what secrets you have locked up in your head, Isaac," she said, "but I can keep a secret, and it's not like you're the only one taking a risk here. You must know you're as likely to find out my secrets as I am yours, given that I'm decidedly not a master of the mind arts." "Right," said Isabel. She breathed out, long and slow and steady. "Right." She picked up her books and stacked them, then got up to put them on the library cart. Laia joined her, and soon the table was cleared. "So, you're willing to do this?" asked Laia. "I'm willing to try." "We can go right now if you want," said Laia. "I brought my frameworks book with me. If we get to an isolation room, that's all we need." "All right." Isabel nodded, steeled herself. It was going to work out. It would be all right. It had to be. The isolation room that Laia chose for them was bright and airy, with a high ceiling and narrow, faceted windows. The walls and floor were made of golden wood, with patterns embedded in different grains and colors. He waved Isaac through the door first, then followed after. The other boy was openly staring. "I've never been in one of these rooms before," he said. "Makes sense," said Laia. "Most cadets wouldn't have reason to come here." "I'm not really a cadet," Isaac protested. Laia shrugged. "Close enough." He closed the door behind them, and took a moment to steady himself as all of his connections, his vague magic sense, his general presence awareness, cut off. Isaac didn't flinch, but then again, he was already suppressing any such connection he might have had, so that made sense. Laia didn't much like being in the isolation rooms, but they were the only suitable place for the kind of work he and Isaac needed to do. "So, what now?" asked Isaac. He shifted his weight from foot to foot and tugged at his uniform jacket. Proper cadets or not, even on the weekends, students at the military academy wore their uniforms. Laia rather pitied them. "Now, you sit on that triangle," said Laia, pointing, "and face the middle of the room. Give me a moment, and I'll find the right figures for a mind-to-mind stabilizer." He went back to flipping through the book, and Isaac sat cross-legged on the triangle. Not long after that, everything was ready. 3 intricate lines of chalk surrounded Isaac, branching out across the floor, and Laia's own spot was marked as well. "Everything's ready," said Laia. "Are you?" "I think so," said Isaac. "How is this going to work exactly?" "You'll take off your suppressor," said Laia, sitting cross-legged in his own spot on the floor. Then we'll go through the Eden, and then you're going to work on how to separate yourself from me in a variety of ways. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Isaac took a visible deep breath and nodded. Okay, I'm ready. Laia tied his hair back in a ponytail. It liked to cling uncomfortably to his neck when he did magic otherwise. And took a deep breath of his own. Take off the suppressor, then. He felt the change, even as he saw it. Without the suppressor, Isaac had a presence to him, stronger now than it had been when Laia had first felt it. It wasn't as out of control as it had been in the classroom, at least. The familiar symbols of the Eden fell from his lips, a long liquid string of sounds, and as Isaac took up the chant with him, he felt the presence ebb, some of the tendrils of self that glowed under mage sight, folding back under Isaac's skin. And when they'd run through it 3 full times, Laia thought that there was little enough of Isaac's presence that they could probably work with it without being overwhelmed. "Who are you?" he asked, because it was the first question that came to him. An easy answer for Isaac, if not himself, and something that should help his friend find where he ended and Laia began. "Isaac Ainadu," said Isaac, but something was wrong. Laia knew what a person usually looked like answering that question honestly. It shouldn't have rippled through the room like it did. Isaac had lied. "You're not," said Laia sharply. If he really had been Laia Nimar, nobody girl from a nobody family, he might have let it go. But Isaac was here to learn all he needed to know to join the Prince Guard, then the King's Guard. He was Laia Nimar, but he could not let it go. "Yes, I am," Isaac snapped back. "Who else would I be?" "I don't know, but maybe you should be the one telling me that." Under his mage sight, Laia could see Isaac's presence unraveling again, filling the room with its writhing self. He was afraid. Of Laia, of what Laia now knew. "I can't tell you," said Isaac, but his tenuous control had by then completely collapsed. They'd get no further that day, Laia knew. "Aktanianu," said Laia, gesturing sharply, and the wards in the isolation room flared to life, pushing Isaac back into his skin. He gasped, pressed his fingertips to his temples as he swayed slightly where he sat. Normally, Laia would have felt sorry for him. That particular ward was harmless overall, but it wasn't any fun to be targeted by it. Right then, he was too consumed by everything else to feel much pity. "Put your suppressor back on," he said, "and don't run off, please. I think we need to talk." I won't," Isaac said weakly, hands shaking a little as he picked up the amulet to hang it around his neck again. After a long, tense pause, Laia sighed. "I knew you had secrets," he said slowly. "There was no other reason for you to be as resistant as you were to the idea of getting a teacher's help. But I must admit, I wasn't expecting it to be something as fundamental to you as your very name." "And I didn't think you'd be able to tell," said Isaac bitterly. "I guess we were both wrong." "I mean," said Laia, if you knew more, you need to have some sort of feel for who you are, where your self ends and my self begins. The quick way to do that is just define yourself. This wasn't supposed to be complicated like this." Not that he'd have responded better, but he didn't need to respond better. Oh, not that he'd have responded better. Isaac, and he would keep calling him Isaac until he heard otherwise, did. "Ugh," said Isaac. "What a mess this is." "A mess indeed," Laia mumbled under his breath. He rubbed his forehead, wishing heartily that he'd never suggested this at all. The problem was as follows. Isaac Ainadu was training, though he didn't know it, to be one of Laia's closest bodyguards in the future, and he was lying about his identity. And if Laia didn't know who was guarding him, how could he trust that they weren't planning to drive a knife into his back at the closest opportunity? Are you going to tell anyone?" Isaac asked quietly. He was staring at the floor, spinning his amulet between his fingers. I don't know, Laia admitted. That kind of depends, I suppose. On? On what it is you're hiding. I mean, I might not even care if you were just another cadet, but you're not. You're training for the Kingsguard. Yes, I know, said Isaac. Funny, I wouldn't have taken you for that kind of patriot. He sighed. Laia managed not to choke. Maybe you could tell me the potential consequences of this secret of yours coming out, he suggested, since you obviously don't want to just tell me what it is. This room is warded, right? It's an isolation room. No one can spy on us from the outside. It's just me and you. It's just me in here with you. All right, said Isaac, running a hand through his short dark hair. All right. If anybody found out, I'd almost certainly be kicked out of school. And I wouldn't be able to be part of the Kingsguard either. He shook his head ruefully. Maybe you'll think it's silly, he said. But there's always been an Ainadu in the Kingsguard. And there wasn't anyone suitable in my generation, so they sent me instead. Laia tilted his head. I thought this was something you wanted, he said. Not an obligation. Isaac shrugged. I mean, it was my idea, but my family didn't take much convincing either. They weren't going to make me do anything, but they were glad I'd come to them with a solution. So, whatever it was that Isaac was hiding, it was something important. Something that would disqualify him from being a member of the Prince Guard and, later, the King's Guard. But it didn't seem like the Ainadu part of his name was a lie, if everything else he'd said was true. And Laia was a fairly good judge of these things. Isaac probably was an actual member of House Ainadu then, and that much made Laia less concerned about his loyalties. But either Isaac was a lie, or Ainadu was, which meant that he was either from a much more distant branch and had just changed his name, but that really wasn't something one needed to lie about usually, or he was... Oh, said Laia. Oh, you're a girl, aren't you? Isaac stiffened in shock, blinking uncomprehendingly at Laia for a moment before giving his head a sharp shake. I'm not, Isaac said. A girl, I mean. Not that there's anything wrong with girls. I mean, you're a girl, I'm just not one. It's the only thing that fits, said Laia, and he laid out all his reasons. Isaac grew progressively more blank-faced as he went on, and when he was done, Isaac simply sat there for a long moment, staring at nothing in particular, before swearing harshly but quietly and getting up to pace around the room. Laia didn't say anything, nor did he bother to get up. Instead, he sat there and watched his friend go back and forth. They'd been there long enough that the angle of the light through the windows had noticeably changed. He could wait a few minutes more. You can't tell anyone about this, Isaac said at last, turning to face Laia. You know it would mean the end of me as part of the Kingsguard if word got out about all this, especially if it made its way back to the royals. Laia winced, but he couldn't tell Isaac his secrets, not now. Not to a person with a strong natural affinity for mind magic and absolutely no control. I won't tell anyone, said Laia, and he meant it. He wouldn't hold it against Isaac either, he promised himself. Not even when he went back to living his life as Prince Nyamyal, and Laia Nimar was but a distant memory. You're right, said Isaac. I am a girl. She leaned back on the wall, put her face into her hands. Just my damn luck to have this thing that I can't control. Just my luck, having this be the thing that betrays my secrets. So, your name isn't really Isaac, said Laia. No, she said, then gave him an appraising look. I'm good at keeping secrets, he said, and I'm good at keeping names straight, too. I won't slip up, I swear. Oh, damn it, I got the wrong voice on that one. I'm good at keeping secrets, he said, and I'm good at keeping names straight, too. I won't slip up, I swear. All right, then, she said. I suppose you'd find out eventually. My real name's Isabel. Isabel Einadu. Laya smiled broadly up at her. Well met then, Isabel Einadu, he said, and he meant it. Isabel smiled hesitantly back. Later, there would be time to think, and Laya would be able to sort things out in his head. Much later, he would be able to tell Isabel his secret in return. But for now, Isabel was still learning, and Laya had yet to make that choice. For now, this was enough. The end. So, that is our story for this week. I know this is a shorter video than it has been, but it is now 6:30 and I'm tired and I want to go to bed. So, that's what I'm going to go do. Alrighty. I will see you guys next week. Have fun, be good, make good trouble, and yeah, I'll see you then. Bye.